Hi there, this is Billy Earle with Lower Shore Politics. Today we have a very special guest. We have Dan O'Hare, who is running for a political office here in Maryland. He's a first-time candidate in 37B.
Correct.
He has an agenda that progressives and people in the center who want reasonable and effective government are going to want to hear. Dan, thank you so much for coming by. I know you've got a ton of things on your schedule these days, door knockings, phone calls, donors, etc., etc. But let's talk a little bit about what brought you to this moment. What made you put your name on the ballot?
Well, thanks for having me. So I put my name on the ballot because no other Democrat was on the ballot. And that literally is the reason why. I do not want to be a politician. But I think someone absolutely needs to speak up for people that have no voice right now. And so that's why I felt it was necessary to put my name on the ballot. I still hope, there's still a couple days left, I hope someone else from 37B does, because we have 2 delegates in our district. And it would be nice if another Democrat decides to run. There are 4 Republicans running. But at least someone will be there to speak.
But so far, no takers.
No.
That's a shame.
Yeah.
You're looking at this race with a history of conservative politics here in Wicomico and certainly in Dorchester and in Worcester. How do you plan to change that?
Right. So the district is interesting. It goes up to Talbot and a little sliver of Caroline, Dorchester, and a kind of a chunk of Wicomico. I think the biggest mistake that most people make when thinking about politics or talking about politics are saying that it's this side or that side. There aren't 2 sides to politics. There's 300 million sides in this country. And whenever we talk about, oh, it's this side or it's that side, we lose nuance. And so I think the most important part of running is trying to talk about actual issues in a nuanced way. Now, it doesn't always work great for radio or television,
right.
But if I can get into someone's kitchen and sit down and talk to them, or maybe in a club meeting or wherever, we can actually sit down and have an hour conversation about one topic, I think that'll be a lot more beneficial than running around and coming up with a slogan and talking in sound bites and, using idioms, because none of that, in my opinion, that doesn't do anything, and that doesn't further our understanding of who we are as human beings, and it doesn't make the world a better place in any way.
Right. Do you think that the American public is in a post-cliche period, that we're really looking for answers and for real discussions, or is that an illusion?
Okay, so what I think is we've always been in that situation. But human beings, in the end, are voracious for entertainment. And what television has done, and I know I worked at MTV for years, and we worked on Jersey Shore and worked on making commercials for all of these shows. What we've done is we've shortened the dialogue. We've used shortcuts to get places. And those shortcuts have become second nature to us. My friends in college and I, we could talk in Seinfeld quotes. And all we needed to do was say Seinfeld quotes, and we would understand what we were saying. And we didn't have to have long conversations because we had a Seinfeld quote for it. That is how the human brain, or the American brain, now operates, I think. And so we have always been hungry for ideas. But we've also wanted the quickest and fastest way to get to those ideas. So I think there might be an appetite for drilling down deeper into ideas now. I wonder if the reason why 47% of the country never votes and 55% of the country doesn't vote in off-year elections is because no one speaks to them. I don't know if that's the reason. Maybe they're busy. I don't know. But I know that a lot of politicians I've heard have just kind of reiterated the same talking points over and over again, and it means nothing to me in general.
Yeah, the axiom going back to one of the architects, really, of the Southern strategy and I would say, campaign protocol as we know it, Lee Atwood, was that repetition was the key to effective messaging. I'm sorry, Lee Atwater. I'm not sure that the current generation of the consulting class has moved much beyond that, but I think that the American public, to a very large degree, has.
Right.
And especially when they're on camera, I think there's a great deal more encouragement for them to push back on false narratives, on narratives that are, if perhaps not false, disingenuous or deceptive. I think at the CPAP, we saw a lot of things that were said and a lot of things that were verbalized, which in a moment of ration reason, one could easily say, well, this is really just a falsehood. This is just trying to make sure that that class of people that are here at a midterm, which has a historically low turnout, exactly as you said, simply aren't going to tune in and get the message. When you're communicating with the people that you know are your people and you're doing your GOTV, what are you going to say to them?
Right, and I think that right there might be the traditional thinking is what you're talking about here.
Yeah.
The problem is, traditional thinking, of course, it's like if you're explaining, you're losing. 10 words or less. Give me that 10 words or less answer. And part of that traditional thinking is for the Get Out the Vote campaign, getting your base, calling them up, making sure, they have a route to get to the,
right.
That's what they tell you. You have to talk to them about how they plan on getting to the polling station, because if you talk to them,
right.
they visualize their route, there's a better chance they'll get there. I think that's all true. That's absolutely all true, and that's a valid way to campaign. But I don't want to just talk to my base. I want to talk to everyone. And I don't want to look at someone as this person's my base or this person's not. I mean, I am someone who believes that America is a deeply flawed country and always has been. I believe that America is not a just country. I believe that we are only good at violence. That is the thing we're best at. We're number one at violence, and that's pretty much it. We're also really good at making giant movies where stuff blows up, but that's a form of violence, of course.
Right.
So, most people on both sides don't agree with that. So I don't know who my base necessarily is. I think my base is probably the people that won't vote anyway, honestly.
Okay.
And I would love it if I can talk to them, and I would love it if they change their mind and decide to come out and vote. But in reality, the people that I'm going to speak for are the people that don't vote. And that's pretty much guaranteed to fail. But I'm okay with that because these people don't have a voice, and they've been unrepresented in politics for so long. That's probably why they don't vote. I mean, I don't know if we ever have any good, true studies of why people choose not to vote, but it's an enormous part of our population. And if you think about it, the person that's won every single election in my lifetime has been nobody. Has been literally the no vote has won every single election in my lifetime. No candidate has ever gotten more votes than that.
Yeah. The people at Pew boil and distill the non-voting down to two elements. One, when the voter says, I don't know enough about this election to vote, and even more disturbing, my vote doesn't matter.
Sure. And I think there's a absolutely valid reason why people would believe that. For so long, this country's built on one thing, making money. That's what it's been built on. And there were other things, of course, that attempted and false starts that happened and whatever, but in the end, it's all about making money.
Yeah.
And for people who are shut out of that, who are not part of the, extreme wealth, or the people that don't believe they can someday get there,
right?
Why would they care? And I wouldn't care, And I happen to be born, we won a lottery when I was born, and because of that, I got to be part of the, people that made money. And
Cut you. Go ahead.
I got to be part of the people that, made money and lived an interesting life and traveled a lot and did a lot of things. and whatever. But it wasn't because I pulled myself up from my bootstraps.
Right.
It was because I got lucky how I was born, and it was because the society was set up for people like me. Well, society's not set up for a lot of people.
No.
And those people, why would they vote? Society's not built for them. Of course they wouldn't vote. Now, some people literally can't be bothered. And that's fine. Maybe I don't speak to them.
Yeah.
But I would like to speak for the people that they feel like it's complete waste of their time to vote, because no matter how they vote, nothing will change.
Part of the issue, some commentators would argue, is that, and I'm going to lift a phrase from Obama's campaign, hope and change, that hope and change is really only a sellable commodity when you have a highly charismatic leader who is proffering that language. When your average politician, and let's even include people who are very good politicians and would be great office holders and all that, but they tend to be on the wonkish side. They tend to be slightly nerdy, which means they're staying up until 2 in the morning, reading the texts that give us the intel behind the Soviet Union or NATO or poverty in South America. We seem to want somebody who is perhaps more dramatic. Somebody who perhaps more is TV friendly. Somebody who has a handle on what little bite we want to swallow at that point. So the two argue persuasively against each other. Now, you're the guy in the middle, and the system's not for you and all that. Have you given up trying to change the thing?
Change the system?
Yeah.
No, not at all.
But isn't that why they don't vote?
Oh, I think so. I
Yeah.
mean, I come from a place of privilege, so that's the difference. Like, I come from a place of privilege where I think things will be fine and things will get better and things can be right,
Right.
and so I have that, that viewpoint. It's easy to be an optimist when you're like me. It's much harder to be an optimist when you don't come from that place of privilege. I think the system will absolutely change. There's no question. The way it will change is either violent or nonviolent, and I vote for nonviolent.
Right.
So my hope is that there will be a nonviolent change to our system. It'll be a massive overhaul, and we'll finally get rid of the scourge, which has been capitalism. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't. I think that in my lifetime, we're going to see more violent revolutions and revolts and whatever throughout the world and in the United States. And I doubt we'll see the end of capitalism in my lifetime. But at some point, with automation coming, we're going to need to move towards a more collectivist society.
Okay.
And if people think that things are going to be the same as they were 100 years ago, those people are stupid.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not going to be the same. It's not going to be the same as it was 20 years ago.
Right.
And we need to face the future. And in order to face the future, we got to look at the past and
Yeah.
be honest about what the past was. And the past is that this country was built on slave labor. It was built on abusive labor practices, and it was, it's a unjust country. And if we think we're the shining city on the hill, we're lying to ourselves. We're not. Now, we can be great, but I mean, if people think we're going to be great by, going home and watching news programs where people yell at each other,
Right.
and that's it, and not reading books, and not studying philosophy, and not consuming art other than, what the latest television show is, then we're not going to be great. We're just going to be consumers.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what our society is trying to develop, are more and more consumers who believe they're wonderful, who believe they're the best thing ever. So, I hear a lot of people go around and say America is the best country in the world. I'm like, have you been to the other ones?
Yeah.
I don't know why you would think that, because of the extreme poverty we have.
Easy
here.
cliche.
Yeah.
Easy
It's
cliche.
Yeah.
The Orioles are the best. The University of Maryland
Whoa,
basketball team is the best.
okay, the Orioles are the best. All right, the Orioles are the best team to root for, even if they don't win all the games. They're the
Okay.
best team to root for.
Okay.
That is something I will not use.
But we've always been a country that accumulated intellectually around the fill in the blank is number one.
Mhm.
whether it's a sport team, whether it's a political candidate,
Sure.
whether it is just the nation of the whole. And I think we go to a very, very extreme length to avoid the truth about the history of the country. I know one person out of 10,000 who's read Howard Zinn's book,
Right.
or even knows of it.
Sure.
Well,
Well-
and if they did, it would shock them,
Right.
because the truth in that book is overpowering. But we as a nation don't do that.
Right.
So here we are in, I would say, in precarious times. Whether or not 18 U.S.C. 201 kicks in and there's a bribery statute there that the president is held accountable to, or more likely what happens is that the template from Watergate is followed and the president resigns and then ultimately is pardoned, and we wash all this underneath the rug. Americans have got to look at this and say, okay, the system is really beyond broken now. It's shattered.
Well, and I think what you bring up is interesting, because I don't want to talk about the president at all in my campaign, ever, never. I don't want to. I'm especially as Democrats, but in general, Americans, we have a tendency to look up, constantly looking up, and we're paying attention to the president, what the president's doing. We need to look around, to go to Howard Zinn's point, of the people's history of the United States. There's a whole history of people trying to make change that we don't teach, and that includes locally here. When I spent the last year making a documentary about the sign in downtown Salisbury, and learning the history of Salisbury, which is not taught at all. Frederick Douglass came and spoke to Salisbury. And he spoke for 2 hours. He did a speech called The Self-Made Man. It's a fabulous speech. I suggest everyone go out and read the speech. It's fantastic. It's like reading Cicero. I mean, it really is like, he was a truly great orator. He is the most famous person ever to come to Salisbury. I mean, think about it. Like who Jimmy Connors, like John McEnroe,
Yeah.
Who else is the most famous person? Like Fats Domino was here. There was, of course, the Chitlin Circuit, which was here, and there were all these great musicians that came here. But Frederick Douglass was one of the rare minds that America ever produced. And he came to Salisbury, and he gave a speech in 1880 to a pretty packed house. And there's no recognition of that here.
None.
None. And I think that if we don't look locally, if we keep our eyes up, pointed at the presidency, we're doing a disservice to our own community. And I think the important thing is the people story. Who are the people around here? Who are our outside of our social circle, outside of our friends, outside of our family? What's happening in their lives? How are they struggling? How can we fix that? How can we help? How can we come together? How can we unite as a people? And, until we start doing that, who cares what the president does? It's just people playing games. And like you said, it's rooting. It's rooting for a sports team. That's all it is. I love sports. I coach lacrosse. I am a huge baseball fan. I've loved the Orioles since I've been born. And I write about the Orioles occasionally in very poetic terms, and predicted their 93-win season. I predicted they would win 90 and was known as the prophet. And, I love sports. But sports has its place, of course. And it brings people together, and it's a wonderful thing. And I think sports is fantastic. But there's a time for sports and there's a time for politics. And politics should be the politics of the local. It should be the people that exist in our place that we don't know, that we don't touch, that aren't within our circle. And we need to find those people and have a dialogue with them and a conversation with them. And that is something that never happens. And that's what the people's history of the United States is about. It's about people organizing. It's about, it's basically labor's history of the United States, in a way, and the rights organizations and stuff. And the United States is so interesting because we have created this ideal, and it has been a lie, but we've still created it. So you take the Magna Carta, is obviously the first kind of chink in the armor of the
Right.
kings and divine right power and that kind of thing. And then from the Magna Carta, eventually you get to the the liberalist philosophers, and then you get to the creation of the United States and the idea that all men are created equal. Well, those are beautiful words, and I believe it's true. But they didn't.
No, not at all.
But that the fact that that was created and taught is something that will slowly. It's what Martin Luther King Jr. talked about when he talked about the arc of history bends towards justice. Is that these ideas that are presented, these great ideas that are presented by philosophers, maybe aren't implemented, but they're still talked about, and they're still utilized as these rough foundation blocks for this
Right.
country. So yeah, all men are created equal as long as they're white property-owning men. Well, that gets expanded a little bit. The idea of whiteness changes a little bit, includes other people. It used to be if you were Italian, that's not white.
That's right.
Okay, now if you're Italian, you're white, but not if you're Sicilian. They're letting certain people into the club. Whatever it is.
Well, it extended to our people. Irish were considered not white people.
Yeah, absolutely. And throughout time, things change and evolve, and our country has continued to evolve. We've gotten to the point where now we're looking at the words of all men are created equal. All people are created equal. And we're looking at our society and saying, well, that's not really what we do. And we have access to both.
No, it's not really what we do.
And so maybe it's time to choose. Like, what do we choose? Do we choose the society that, morally, to let the free market decide who gets healed? Like I'm not Christian, but if Jesus came down and was talking to people and he's like, so how do you decide who gets healed? We're like, well, we let the free market decide.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I gave you free will.
Yeah.
Why don't you use it?
Right.
Why you have removed that part of the moral question of who gets healed and given it to an unthinking, uncaring numbers game?
Yeah.
Why would you do that? That's what. So, we have to look at those things and say, all right, organize locally. Look at your neighbors who you don't know. Talk to your neighbors who you don't know. Find out what the real issues are that exist. And let's work on them. Let's sit down and work on them. Let's try to come up with solutions. Mm-hmm. Let's not talk in slogans, but let's try to come up with solutions. How do we heal people? Heroin's a huge issue, right?
Yep.
Everyone talks about heroin. And, everyone's super concerned about heroin. It's bad. We know how to fix the heroin problem. We've known how to fix it since day one. Guns. Everyone talks about guns. Guns are a huge problem. Violence in Baltimore is terrible. The violence in Baltimore is awful. But everyone knows how to fix it. And we just don't have the will to do it for some reason. Like legalization of drugs ends violence around drugs. Mm-hmm. It does. It's not going to make it that much easier to get the drug. It'll make it a little bit easier. But it ends the violence around it. And the problem with drugs is not that people want to get high. People want to get drunk. They get drunk. Like it's not that people aren't using their brain in the right way. That's not the problem with drugs. The problem with drugs is the violence. So let's get rid of the violence. Prohibition, we figured that out it's that kind of thing. We can end that problem today. We can end it. And of course there's very moneyed interests that are trying to prevent that from
big
happening,
money involved,
obviously. But and that's another reason why.
Usually at the bottom of most of our problems. Absolutely
the bottom of all of our problems. But we can fix it today if we wanted. And we don't have the will to do it. I think if we drill down to these ideas locally, I love The Wire. I'm a big fan of The Wire. And like Amsterdam, he fixed the problem. He fixed the problem, and of course he gets fired and all this, crazy, but they fixed the problem. And of course that's fictional, but at the same time, there's
a grain of truth now.
There's more than a grain.
Okay.
There's more than a grain.
What do you think about the, I would say young people today, many of whom are not able to vote, but are marching, are carrying signs, are going to Washington, are going to their state legislatures, because the proliferation of guns and the lack of distance and effort in between the desire for one and the acquisition of one has become a major issue.
Sure.
How can we help? Everybody needs to be involved in this. People who own guns, but realize that an AR-15 is not a suitable weapon for deer hunting, and certainly not for duck or anything else. Do we need to give money? Do we need to grab a sign and go to Washington like we all did for the Women's March? What do you call for? What is your call to action?
I used to be a legal immigrant in Ireland.
Okay.
And when I was a bouncer at a bar in Temple Bar. It's my second night, and there was a guy kicking pint glasses into the crowd.
Oh.
So I ran to get him, and another bouncer came from the other end. We each grabbed an ankle and grabbed him, and he hit the back of his head on the high top. He's bleeding from the back of his head. We're dragging him out of the bar. He puts his fist through a window in the door and tries to hold on as if for some reason we'd let him stay.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? You fought for it. Here, go back and have another pint.
That's enough.
Yeah. No.
Have a drink.
And so he's bleeding from the wrist. He's bleeding from the head. It's awful. We have blood all over us, and we throw him out in the street. And in Temple Bar, it's an area in Dublin where there's lots of bars, and there's bouncers everyone. They all come over.
Yeah.
Anytime there's an incident, or someone comes over from it. And so there's about 10 of us standing around, and he gets up and he curses at us a bunch and then says, "I'm going to get a gun and come back and shoot you." And I was terrified.
Okay.
And they all laugh at him. They're like, "Who do you know? You don't know anyone.
You're
You're not
really
connected."
Right.
Because if you're not part of the IRA there, you can't get a gun.
Yeah.
And suddenly I was like, man, I'm 6'4", in a country without guns.
Right.
I can rule this. It's great. So, it was a wonderful feeling.
Yeah.
That was the first time I felt that I did. There was absolutely no fear that this person could come back and shoot me. It would be nice if our school children had that same comfort level. It would be nice if they there was a fire drill and they thought, oh, it's probably a drill. But in the back of their mind, they'd be like, oh, maybe there's a little bit of a fire. And that was as far as it went. Because that's what we felt growing up. But now, school children, they hear a fire drill, think, I might get shot.
Oh, right, absolutely.
And that's horrifying that exists. Now, is it guns' fault? Well, the proliferation of guns is disturbing. Mm-hmm. And it has been disturbing for a long time. If we were going to do something about guns, we should have done something about guns a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
We did not. We passed, and 50 million guns were sold in the last, 8 years, 7 years. It's 50 million guns. That number is astronomical. There's less gun ownership now than there was, 20 years ago, because less people are owning guns, but the people that have guns are owning more. I absolutely, in my opinion, and we'll talk about the students in a second, but in my opinion, I don't know what the need is for an AR-15. My uncle killed a polar bear with a bow and arrow with one shot. Mm-hmm. I don't think anyone needs to spray and pray to kill a squirrel or whatever it might be. I think they're fun to shoot. There's no question. We could leave them at gun clubs and let people go shoot them there. For home defense, shotgun's pretty awesome. Mm-hmm. So I don't think, and it'll get your neighbors come running no matter how far away they are. Yeah. So I don't think I don't think AR-15 is super necessary. AR-15 is not even scratching the surface of our gun violence problem. Obviously, handguns do far and away more damage.
More people die.
Much more people die. And I don't see America being able to change that anytime soon. I think if you really want to attack the gun issue, then you need to attack the economic disparity issue. Mm-hmm. And you'll never end violence completely, and it's a dream to think of it. But I do think guns now, again, the AR-15 completely unnecessary. We don't need it.
Right.
Gun clubs, get rid of it. That's fine. There's still 2 million of them out there at least, or 3 million in private homes. But I don't see any reason to continue selling it going forward. I absolutely see registration's a good idea. The stuff you have to do for a dog or a car, why not have to do it for a gun? I don't see any problem with that. And I don't know any legal gun owners that, other than it being a little bit of hassle, it's a big deal for them. You know what I mean? But I think the issue with guns and gun violence is economic. It's an economic issue. And honestly, you can end a lot of gun violence by legalizing drugs. And yeah, it doesn't look like a direct one-to-one, but it is. Marijuana is very easy to get, right?
Mhm.
Cannabis, you can get it super easy. Heroin, you can get it super easy right now. It's super cheap. Or it's fentanyl or whatever it is, but it's that kind of opioid. Whenever there's a drug that's very easy to get, there's an increase in violence around the territory for that drug.
Right.
Because anyone can get it, then you have to defend that territory for where you sell the drug. If it's legalized, all of that goes away. And I mean, I love movies. I love watching movies. I've seen every mafia movie ever made. Just take it away from them. Take the market away from them.
Right.
Like that's all you have to do, and then the violence. Violence will never disappear. As human beings, there's violence. It exists, but the serious violent problems we have, the serious violence in certain cities, is all centered around drugs, and it could just go away if we legalize it.
And I couldn't agree more. Dan, tell the people out in the viewing audience where they can get hold of you. How can they help you? What do you want them to do?
I want them to, well, if they're in my district, I would like them to vote for me. That would be great. But no matter where they are, I would like them to volunteer on Kirkland Hall's campaign.
Wonderful.
I think Kirkland Hall's campaign is the most important campaign that's happening on the Eastern Shore and locally. Kirkland Hall is such a fantastic person. And
He's amazing.
I just absolutely an unbelievable person. And when I was interviewing him for this documentary, and about halfway through, I stopped the interview. I said, if you were my college professor, I never would have dropped out of college.
Yeah, exactly.
But he's just an incredibly knowledgeable, wonderful man. Just a great coach, a great person, and absolutely should be the type of person that's in the State House representing this area. No question.
Couldn't happen to a better guy.
No, and he's going to need help because he's involved in 62 million things all the time, and he's got 12 million things going on. Just catching up with him is hard enough, with all his crazy schedule. He's going to need help, and his race is by far the most important race on the Eastern Shore. So I would suggest getting up with Kirkland Hall and his campaign, and going out and knocking doors for him, volunteering, getting people registered in his district to vote. And of course, if you happen to be in my district, it'd be great if you voted for me.
Vote for Dan. Okay. This has been Dan O'Hare running for the House of Delegates in 37B. This is Lower Shore Politics with Billy Earl. Thank you for tuning in, and go to the Lower Shore Politics website at YouTube, and you'll be able to watch this in the comfort of your home. Thank you, God bless you, and we'll see you on down the road.